we're going to do some injury updates because the Mitchell Robinson ankle injury, workload management. Mike Brown, I thought, had an interesting answer when he was asked about that before the game. Let's take a listen.
Well, I think he only played in one, maybe two preseason games. So yeah, so and that will change. There may be a stretch of 5 games that we may sit him, or a stretch of 2 games we may sit him. There's no definition of what load management is. You just kind of go along, or myself and the medical team and the front office will go along as we see fit, and we'll decide when we want to sit him during practice and when we want to sit him during the game. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, so if that was Fred Katz of The Athletic, I thought he asked a great question. If the workload management plan is in place, why did Mitchell Robinson play those preseason games and then sit out that early second half of the third one when the rest of the starters were in, and then he didn't play or practice since? Mike Brown, I mean, he's answering these questions the best way he can, and I think he's just in a tough spot because obviously something happened where Mitchell Robinson tweaked something. The Knicks are saying it's not an injury. That's fine, but obviously he's not 100% healthy. He was healthy enough to play in the preseason. So something is amiss here. Mike Brown, it seems like he's kind of caught in the middle of it. Knicks are saying that they have a full season plan here for Mitchell Robinson where he's going to probably sit when he's healthy. And the goal is to have him healthy for when it matters for the postseason. But you heard Mike Brown say, we might sit him 5 games in a row. It's just based on, the Knicks are saying it's based on just what's best for Mitchell Robinson, for the team, and they want him to be fully ramped up here 100% before he hits the floor to start the year. Just one of those puzzling situations that, you know, for a first-year head coach, it's going to be hard to deal with because Mitchell Robinson is such an important player for this team, for what the Knicks want to do. They want to start that double big lineup. And CP, when you look at this thing, you've been following this team for years. You've been following it, obviously, since Mitchell Robinson has been around. Do you think the Knicks are smart to do what they're doing, how they're handling it?
Yeah, well, it's just as you guys said, immediately Mike Brown is under fire here in terms of how they're handling the Mitchell Robinson injury and the communication around it. Something happened there, either in that Minnesota game or before. I thought it was odd that he did not come out with the starters to start that third quarter in that preseason game with the Timberwolves. Mike Brown opted to go with Gershon Yabusele. But at the end of the day, it's about having Mitchell Robinson healthy when the playoffs start and beyond. They were fortunate to have him ramp up in the second half of the season last year, and where he peaked in the playoffs and really shined bright for them. But now is a challenge to get him through an 82-game season. And so it was a little bit interesting that he missed his first game. You know, how do you load manage the first game of the season? Clearly he's experiencing some level of discomfort where they're not able to play him. But with the future in mind and with the playoffs in mind, they're going to have to do what they have to do to keep this guy under some sort of bubble wrap. You know, you have Huck Porter, you have Jemison, and those guys who you hope can step in his absence, but you can't replace Mitchell Robinson, man. He's very important for this team.
And Frank, I think Mike Brown showed you something when he went with Ariel Hukporti, the second-year center, as opposed to going Towns at center and maybe Yabusele or you know, just Towns at center, then 4 shooters. He showed you he wants to see that double big lineup there. What do you think of that alignment in the current NBA?
Yeah, I think it's worked with a number of teams. I think with the Knicks, I think it was, you know, one of their better lineups last season. You know, it's interesting with the situation with Mike Brown. I always go back to like what Isaiah Thomas used to say when he was running the Knicks, when he'd say, I could tell you, but I have to lie to you. And I kind of feel like Mike Brown's in the same position because clearly there's something going on with Mitchell Robinson. And you know how it is, today's NBA, there's so many more medical people. There's so many more people in the front office. So everyone, you know, when these guys get injured, this is every team. Everyone's kind of trying to cover for themselves. I don't want to be completely upfront with the media. I remember when I first started covering sports, I had a longtime writer tell me, listen, every injury is a big deal. They're always going to try to tell you it's not, but it usually is. And I think with Mitchell Robinson, you know, CP was talking about it. He played 17 games last year. So it's kind of similar. He only came along late. And when he played in those 17 games on a minutes restriction, wasn't able to play back-to-back, the Knicks, I think, either had the first or second best defensive rating in the year. So clearly he makes an impact. But I would just worry about a guy like him, because to your point, what Fred asked about, well, if you were doing this kind of workload management, whatever everybody wants to call it now, what was he playing in meaningless games for? And yet now he's not available for the first game. So clearly something happened. And you just wonder, you just look at these players, certain guys, especially the bigger guys, when they have foot and ankle issues, you wonder, is this just going to be an ongoing thing? Look at Victor Wembanyama when he made his season debut last night. Hadn't played since February 12th. Now, I know that he was out last season. It was a blood clot. It had nothing to do with his legs. But you watch Wembanyama, who's like the extreme example of a tall, lean, long guy. Every time you watch him, you're crossing your fingers saying, man, I hope the guy doesn't get hurt on the next possession. And I kind of think it's like that with Mitchell Robinson. I understand that he's built differently, but he's kind of in this cycle of where he's hurt. And you always worry about it. It's like these guys that are like that, it feels like they're always hurt. And lo and behold, first game of the season, he's not available to play.
Yep. And just a quick aside, I'm laughing because you were talking about covering injuries. And I remember, you cover the NFL and it's all about the guy's status for Sunday. It gets updated throughout the week, blah, blah, blah. So I go from covering the NFL to coming to Knicks practice. And I think Wilson Chandler was hurt. And I pulled him aside and I start just peppering him with 10 questions about his ankle that's, sore or whatever. And Frank pulls me over. He's like, yo, Peter Jennings, relax, man. It's just a sore ankle. Like, what are you doing?
And I remember the time when they had Rasheed Wallace on the team. And Rasheed showed up early on. He looked okay. And within like 3 weeks, he wasn't playing. He was already like starting to put on a little bit of weight. He looked like he was never going to play again. Yeah. And the Knicks kept saying, Rasheed Wallace, sore ankle. Or maybe it was sore foot. I'm like, foot. I mean, It's like 2 months into it. And I was like, something must be going on. So I wasted like an entire afternoon making as many phone calls as I could. I finally found out he had a stress fracture. Listen, it's not the end of the world. The guy was never going to play. It wasn't like it was Carmelo Anthony. And then I wrote that he had a stress fracture. And then Nick started telling people, Frank is wrong. It's a stress reaction. And I was like, well, hang on a second. They were telling you for 2 months it was a sore foot. So now they're being honest with you. Okay. The point is, they're always going to be secretive. Hey, in NHL, when a dude gets hurt, they call it a lower body injury.
Right.
There's a lot of your lower body. It could be a foot. It could be a knee. So every sports team does it now. Yeah. And, with the gambling and stuff, you think there'd be more transparency. But I think these organizations, like a guy gets hurt, everyone goes on lockdown. They're like, no, the media, you guys are off limits. We're not going to be transparent with you.
Right. I think that we were saying, too, that Rasheed's out for the year, like at some point early. And then, like, they kept saying, no, that's not true. Then they trotted poor Rasheed out for like 4 minutes in the last regular season game.
Unbelievable. We were down in Charlotte, CP. They threw him out there. I mean, first of all, he was warming up for the game. I was like, who the heck is that? I thought it was like a dude that they pulled out of the crowd. I felt so badly for him. And Rasheed, one of his finest moments was playing center for the Celtics game 7 after Perkins went down with the knee injury against the Lakers. Remember, the Celtics go into in LA needing to win only one game. Perkins goes down. They had never lost a playoff series when their 5 main guys were all available. Game 7, Rasheed started, and I give him a lot of credit. He put in like a professional effort. And here's a quick story for you. After the game, he was going to retire. And he had his uniform on. He walked to the referee's room to tell Joey Crawford he appreciated working with him over the years, the famous ref. Wow. Rasheed kept his uniform on, walked back to the hotel with his uniform on. How about that?
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's just I loved covering him for about 20 games with him.
I know. Yeah. He knows the sport, man. He's pretty locked in.
Yeah, he was awesome. All right, so let's hit on a couple other injury updates. Josh Hart, the back spasms. I mean, that happened so early in preseason. And I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not even gonna guess. But just I guess they're being cautious here. You want to be very cautious with the back. And he also has a finger that he's dealing with. So a couple of ailments there for Josh Hart. Don't know his status for Friday. And then you've got Karl-Anthony Towns. He said after the game he's got a grade 2 quad strain. And, before the game he was questionable, downgraded to doubtful. An hour later, upgraded to questionable. And then it was clear that he was going to play. And, he said that he just didn't want to disappoint the fans, wanted to be out there. But grade 2, Again, not a doctor, but that seems pretty significant. So that's something to keep an eye on there on the injury front. He had foul trouble early. He played well in the fourth quarter. But Frank, for you, how important is Karl Towns to this team this season?
And what were the games played last year for him? I think it was 70 or 72 he played in. And I think, it was interesting last year. The Knicks lose to Indiana. And I think Indiana's two best players, Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam, in total probably outplayed the Knicks' two best players, Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. It happens. You could make the case who's better, but it happens. Their two best players overall outplayed the Knicks' two best players. I thought Karl got way too much criticism. Here's a guy that went to a conference finals in Minnesota, gets traded to a different team in a different conference, goes back to the conference finals. It was treated well. He's soft. He's this, he's that. The guy had a big year last year. He was an all NBA player. He had some huge moments against Boston. He had some big moments against Indiana. The only thing that worries me about Karl is like when he runs, like his gait looks a little awkward. I always used to say, man, I'm watching, and I love Karl. I was like, man, he looks like Patrick Ewing at 35, except Karl's not 35. So I just wonder about his knees, because when he's right, his ability to stretch the floor, he's always going to be a threat on the perimeter. I thought he had a really good year. I get it. The ending was not great, but man, I thought everyone was beating up on this poor guy. If you can get Giannis for him, I understand it. But come on, folks. The guy was like he was an all-NBA player on a team that went to a conference final. He had a pretty good year last year.
Yeah, he got beat up a lot. I think defense, he became like the punching bag for everything that was wrong with the team defensively. It wasn't all him. It's never all one player. And, sometimes I'll talk to people about him, and, he gets paid to do what he does, to knock shots down and be fantastic on offense. So to me, it's kind of also on the guys on the floor with him, not to make up for everything that he doesn't have defensively, but you should be able to scheme around it in a way where he didn't deserve to be the punching bag for all that went wrong with the Knicks on that end of the floor. But CP, when you hear that, the grade 2 quad, just as a fan, as an observer, do you say, just shut it down and get healthy because you're looking big picture, or do you see the importance of him in a new system, new head coach, playing through this injury?
Yeah, I mean, you'd love to see him out there as much as he can be to gain that chemistry with the team and amidst a new scheme. However, if he's not healthy, then it's the best case scenario to either manage those minutes or to shut him down, to let him heal. Because as Frank said, the Knicks were very fortunate to have Karl-Anthony Towns play the amount of games that he did last year amidst the right knee tendinopathy, and then he had a finger or hand injuries on both hands last year. So they were fortunate to have him to be able to finish the season, and he's going to be vital for this team as a scorer, as a playmaker. The Knicks are going to need his three-point shooting as well. And then, as you said, Ian, how they cover him defensively, which is why Mike Brown wanted to start with Mitchell Robinson, and instead of Mitchell Robinson, did put Huck Porty in there as that big man placeholder to keep Towns there at the 4. But at the same time, as we said, he did show some flexibility to close out that game with Karl-Anthony Towns at the 5 and opting for Deuce McBride in Ariel Huck-Porty's place. So Towns is going to be vital for this team's chances at winning a championship. He just has to be healthy for him.
And Ian, I know you got that big staff over there, but I looked this up. All right, so 3 seasons ago, Karl was at 29 games. The next season, his final season in Minnesota, he was at 62. Last year with the Knicks, 72 games. So he's out there for 72. He averaged 24.4, 12.8 rebounds. Again, he had a huge year, and I think to CP's point, like, you need him. So that's going to be another guy this year. You start hearing stuff like that, and usually the quad, it's we could do the old like nursery rhyme. The quad, the quad's connected to the knee bone. It could be something like that. So it all, those leg injuries for big guys, always you always start to get a little leery. But give him credit for being out there last night on the first game of the season.